Backyard Professor coming at you tonight. My live here in just a few hours. I'm going to have a guest on, and he is going to yet take another look at the Boogosphere. This thing just will not go away. I'm going to give him his chance to present his case. I personally don't believe it's real, but that's okay. I've made a video on that. I've had another friend ask me about Robert Edward Grant. Now, I've been looking into Robert Edward Grant before my friend brought him out, and I went ahead and looked at his documentary Codex, and I have some issues with Robert Grant that I would like to present here. Let's take a look at the clip. He does bring in, probably 7, 8 different items. He's kind of like the updated Graham Hancock, as it were. He wants to bring in the ancient stories, the mysticism, the modern consciousness research, and put that back onto the ancient way of thinking. And he has some interesting ideas on the Vitruvius Man art and the art of the Lost Supper and the relationships with the Great Pyramids, etc. He also has some very interesting ideas on the Tetragrammaton, the Hebrew word name for deity. So let's take a look at this part of the clip that I want to discuss real quick.
Now, if we go back and look at the ancient name of God, in Hebrew it is written as Yod-He-Vav-He. These letters seem like the letters that we've all seen many times over and are referenced in the Bible as the name of God, which is not intended to be spoken and is pronounced Yahweh. To our surprise, what we also noticed is that the He in Yod-He-Vav-He is actually the symbol for a mathematical constant we all know as pi. Is it possible that this is an equation? And what would the equation read as? Because the Yod and the Vav look like the numbers 7. Now, interestingly, if we took that and read it as an equation, the equation would read pi to the 7th power and pi times 7. Pi times 7 is just under 22. And pi to the 7th power is 3020, which is one of the measured values of the perimeter of the Great Pyramid in feet. 3020 feet. Now, some would say that because it's 440 cubits, that would lead us to 756 feet. And what would that be telling us? 756 then would say that we multiply that by 4 and we would end up with 3024, which is remarkably close to 3020, which would assume sort of, 755 feet and just a little bit. If we run this equation as division, pi to the 7th power divided by pi times 7 is equal to 137. And if we look differently at Yahweh, you could even look at it as TH. In Hebrew, it's not necessary to show the letter because it's only consonants. There's no vowels that appear in the Hebrew language. So if we were to look at this as TH, then it would be represented as having an O in between. Is this name even of Yahweh, Yod-He-Vav-He, pointing us to the same dimensional proportions of the sarcophagus in the king's chamber? And all the things that we have found and are yet still finding that relate and point us back from this map within the Last Supper of this enigmatic and mysterious room, is it pointing even to more for us to understand? Is this an unfolding encryption that we're only barely scratching the surface on?
Very intriguing. I'll let you watch. I'll put a link in the description of my video. And I'll let you watch the other one so that you can see why he's tying it back to the Last Supper and back to the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. I want to challenge Robert Edward Grant directly to his Hebrew reconstruction of the Tetragrammaton. Now, I am not completely, I can't just sit down and read Hebrew. I am not linguistically completely capable. I have lots of dictionaries, lots of grammars, lots of lexicons. I am not fluent in Hebrew. I have read a little bit of Hebrew, etc. I do study using the Hebrew as I can. I do have the Logos Bible software, and that is a tremendous help and asset. I would like to ask Robert Grant to do me a favor before I accept his interpretation. Where in any of the Hebrew grammars, this is the core Jessenius Hebrew grammar. This is the updated version, the second edition by A.E. Cowley. This is Jessenius. Thomas O. Lambden, which is truly one of the great university texts and introductions to biblical Hebrew. I can't find what I need Robert Grant to do for me is give me somewhere which Hebraist has said that's a viable way to read the Tetragrammaton, turning it into numbers in this manner. Learn Biblical Hebrew. This is John Dobson's. I've got that. I do have the Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible by Emmanuel Taub. I have a Grammar for Biblical Hebrew by C.L. Seow. I have Biblical Hebrew Step by Step by Menachem Mansour, both volumes. It's a 2-volume work. I have Robert Christome Jr. from Exegesis to Exposition on the Biblical Hebrew. I've got Arthur Walker Jones, Hebrew, the Biblical Interpretation. I have the Matatayu Clark Etymological Dictionary of Biblical Hebrew. This is a very interesting commentary and lexicon. I've got the Biblical Hebrew Text and Workbook by Cattell. I've got Hebrew for Theologians by Jacques Ducombe. I've read the majority of these. Some of them are reference texts, right? This is Sue Groom Linguistic Analysis of Biblical Hebrew, and I have the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensian, the actual text of the Masoretic text of Hebrew. I also have, it's over there somewhere, the Interlinear Hebrew English Dictionary. So while I may not be completely familiar with Hebrew, I damn sure know that this particular interpretation I have never seen, ever. So I want to know who he's getting this from, because my library is a decent cross-representation, I have been told, by a Hebrew scholar and a biblical scholar who saw my Hebrew collection. And this is not all of it. There's a whole bunch more over there. But he said, yeah, you've got to start absolutely in Hebrew. That is superb. You can pretty much cover all the bases in biblical Hebrew. If you don't have time to become fully adept in the language, you certainly have enough reference material. You'll do fine. And then we went through the Logos Bible material online, and the Logos is superb. You also have the Blue Letter Bible online that is exquisitely powerful. It has 1 billion times more than I do in book form. I have never seen this presentation. I don't buy it for a minute. Not even close. Here's part of my problem with it. He says at one point, Yod and Vav look like 7. No, they don't. They're entirely different letters. They do not look like 7. Vav might, but Yod doesn't. Yod is a little comma. You know, does this mean that our number 0 represents the letter O, for instance, you know. I mean, it just doesn't work this way. Does this mean the letter L, the small letter L, equals 1, and so on and so forth? Now, geometrically, Yahweh comes to 26. There is a number assignment to the letters, but that is not because of their shapes. And in gematria, you can see the different numerical values, and they don't match this either. None of the gematria Hebrew scholars that I have, and I have at least 10 books over there in my library. I wanted to get the grammar books. I wanted to get the exegetical books, the scholarship of the Hebrew, and look through them, and I don't find this anywhere. So what I'm saying is we have to use discrimination. We have to be careful. I have a particular soft spot in my heart for the biblical languages, the Hebrew and the Greek. And this is completely new to me, and I don't buy it at all. I'd like to see where he legitimizes it rather than just making stuff up, because the Hebrew letters do not represent numbers in this instance. And it does not add any depth to Yahweh anyway, because he is existence. He is to be. I am who was, will be, and I am, etc. This doesn't add any depth to meaning or theology. I mean, it looks cool, right? And then for him to tie it back to the pyramid, and then for him to just simply say, well, on the other hand, instead of pi and 7, what if they reminded us of THTH, and when you add an O, wait, time out. Where did you get that rule? Add an O between the TH and TH that you're inventing so that you can get Thoth, which ties back to Egypt. That is so arbitrary. There is truly nothing in the ancient inscriptions, in the ancient world, etc., that justifies his approach, at least with the Hebrew. Now, I'm going to be very frank and blunt and honest, because a good friend of mine asked me to look into him, and I do find this type of stuff intriguing. Is it valid? Hell no. And this is unfortunate, because his exposition of the Hebrew is ridiculous, and that automatically clouds everything else he presented in his documentary Codex. Now he claims he's a linguist, Robert Edward Grant, and that he knows 5 languages fluently, etc. And yet he turns around and makes one of the stupidest presentations of the Hebrew Tetragrammaton I have ever seen, bar none. And he wants to be credible with his art critiques and with his mathematics of the different proportions of the king's chamber and how it ties into the 137, that to me just doesn't fly. And true, I am being somewhat critical, but are we looking for what is reality? Or are we playing around and tinkering with guesswork, and after so many hundreds of tries, bam, all of a sudden you say, oh, hey, look, there's a match. That must mean that's the truth. No, you're ignoring all of the other attempts that work. For instance, my question is, and I noticed this the second he brought it up here, why are we beholden to you choosing to putting pi times 7 divided by pi to the 7th power, using 7th as an exponent? Why not pi plus 7 plus pi plus 7? You see, it's arbitrary. That doesn't give you any kind of numerical connection to 137. So arbitrarily sifting through. Why not do subtraction? Why not do pi minus 7 minus pi minus 7? Who says you have to divide? There's no ancient rule there. There's no modern rule. This is just numerology. He gets to choose the operations out of many, many hundreds of mathematical operations that can be used. He goes through all of them and says, well, no, that doesn't get me to the number I want, so I'm not going to use those mathematical operators. Let's see. Shall I do some addition here? And shall I mix addition with subtraction? No, that doesn't give me anything. Let's see. Can I do multiplication? What would happen? And I'm not trying to be sarcastic here. What would happen if you multiply 5 times 7 times pi times 7? You're not going to get 137. So, well, no, it can't be all multiplication. Throw that out. Hey, what if we do pi times 7 and divide that by pi to the 7th? And then you get it. And you still didn't even get it because it doesn't equal 137. All you can do is approximate it. So why are you allowed to round up or round down to fine-tune this stuff? Because pi is an irrational number. It's not an exact number. And so how many decimal points are you allowed to go out before you reach your number you want? You see, 3, 80, 200 million, it makes a difference. So to me, this just appears to be nonsense, arbitrary numerology, where after you work through several dozen different mathematical operations and discarded the misses, all of a sudden you find something that's close enough and you say, hey, that must be it. No, that just doesn't work, in my opinion. So I'm going to leave it at that. I appreciate you watching the Backyard Professor Respond series. This type of stuff is fun and interesting. And I'm not against people exploring, not by any means. I explore myself. Sometimes that mystical bug will hit me like crazy, and I jump into stuff like this. But even if I had the mystical bug, this silliness with the divine name would be thrown out on its ear. It is so unconvincing because it is so wrong. It's not even wrong. So thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I'll be back tonight with my Sunday Night Live with Robert Sheep from Custodial File. He's got some information that he wants to share, and I think it might be very fun to look into. I will catch up to you soon. Have a great day.